Hey everybody, this is Wade with Wade for Wireless, and today I want to talk about the bucket truck incident where that guy got shot because he ran into the power lines. I wasn't going to talk about it much, but I thought I'd do a post. Wireless Estimator had they had their story in there, and he did a pretty good job of covering it, so I thought I'd cover it. But before I start, let me congratulate Dr. Bridget Hester. Once again, she wrote a great article for AGL Magazine. Link is in my blog. aglmagazine.com. So anyway, what it's about is there was a girl, Carla Valencia, that died, and she was poorly equipped, poorly trained. Everything that could have went wrong, and it was really, from reading the article, it was the fault of the owner. OSHA points that way too. The guy that ran the business apparently did a very the guy, for lack of a better word, the guy's apparently a jerk because he put safety last. And the other worker that worked with her admitted it. So she didn't have any experience. It was like they said she was on a tower before, but it was her first real climb. And the other guy that got injured, he had 21 years of experience. So without getting into it, I recommend you read that article. It's a very good article. She wrote about the OSHA report, what happened, and she gave her opinion, which is a good opinion. Again, AGL Magazine, links in the blog. And second, before I go on, I'd like to thank my sponsor, Tower Safety. So go to towersafety.com. Where the best get better, they do OSHA 10 training, they do tower climbing training, competency, safety, and first aid. And they also do CPR training. And did I mention OSHA 10? So I highly recommend it. Tower Safety. Good friends of mine do good work, and they're a sponsor. So what's not to love? You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so let's get on with the story. Thank you, Tower Safety. www.towersafety.com. Okay. Hey, let's go on. So I was reading that story in Wireless Estimator about the guy that got shocked. They went up in the bucket truck. He didn't see the power lines. And for whatever reason, they weren't paying attention. I don't know what was going on. There were two guys in the bucket from what they said in Wireless Estimator. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because one of the most important things you can do out there is pay attention. That's all you have to do. Pay attention to what you're doing. Now, what's simple to do is simple not to do. What do I mean by that? Listen, I'm one of the worst guys to say it about paying attention, but one thing I learned is when you're working on something like that, you have to pay attention. I worked with some really good guys through the years, and when one guy wasn't paying attention, another guy could focus, and he would. I was really blessed that way, because there was usually someone on the job site that took it very, very seriously. Not always the same guy either, because we all get distracted. We all get talking about something that interests us, or we see somebody we haven't seen in a long time, and it really throws us. So I get it. In fact, what's worse is complacency. Common, because when you do something 100 times, you don't even pay attention to what you're doing. It almost becomes habit and reflex, which is why I recommend practicing safety and rescue. Practice safety and rescue, so if an incident does happen, it's habit and reflex. That's what I was trying to say. Someone got in an argument with me saying about, well, when something happens like that, it doesn't matter how much training you have. It's different when somebody's bleeding, and I totally agree with that. But if somebody's bleeding and you say, I know right where the first aid kit is, or if they're on the tower and you say, I can bring them down with whatever safety equipment I have. So that's why it hits home with me, because it's almost like they're saying it doesn't matter how much practice you have. If something bad happens, it's bad. And it is bad. I agree with that. But if your reflexes are built in such a way that you can rescue that person, get the first aid kit, you're a lot more prepared to handle a situation like that than as if you're like, well, now what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What am I going to do? I mean, you're freaking out, man. You can't do that. You got to actually get your head in the game. If you practiced it enough time and you know what you're doing with your gear, at least that part of your head is in the game. Then all you got to worry about is, the sight of blood. Oh, he's hurt. Oh, what do we do? Call 911. Call 911. Meanwhile, you talk to a lot of these guys that did rescues. They just gear up. They're very calm, very patient. They've done it before. They know their equipment. They go up and they rescue somebody. I'm just saying. So back to the bucket truck. For one, thank God they're both still alive. The one guy had some bad burns from what I read in Wireless Estimator, so thank God he's okay. And when I first started writing this, I was going to give the guy a hard time, but I'm not going to do that, right? This guy's probably hearing a lot of crap as it is. You know how it is when you have a near miss. And this one, was huge because, the fire trucks come in and, he was freaking out. And I guess at first they thought they jumped out the side, but they didn't. And I don't know what the whole story is with rescue. Go to wirelessestimator.com and look at the news. It's on the headlines. If you don't see it, just search on the page or scroll down when you're on the news section for near electrocution of two techs requires a review of safe practices. And that's what I want to talk about. Lessons learned. That's why I called this particular post, what did I call it? I call it Bucket Truck Shocker Lessons Learned. But the reason I did that was because it's very important that you understand that you can learn from this. And that's what I want to point out. Complacency. That's one of your number one enemies when you're out here. You get complacent, becomes a habit, becomes a reflex. You don't even pay attention to what you're doing. Before you know it, you made a mistake or you missed something. Very common. Now, these guys must have been competent in a bucket truck because they knew what they were doing. In fact, I think that was probably the least of the worries. From what I read, apparently they know how to level the truck, put everything down and lift up and operate the controls. So I don't think that was a problem. In fact, I think it was more complacency. And I appreciate Wireless Estimator clearing all that up. So let's review. They're able to operate the bucket truck. That's good. So how does this go back? I know you guys are going to get irritated, but I always bring up about the FISC. And I have a post on the FISC. And everyone seems to come back with me and says you have to be competent because what you have to do is be competent on the FISC or on the Petzl ID or on the Safety 8. Whatever you use, you have to be competent on it. That is a great statement because they're all right. You need to practice and be competent. In fact, I think when you go up the tower, you should be competent with any equipment you have, no matter what it is, whether it's a FISC or a Petzl ID, a Rescue 8, whatever it is. You should be competent with your harness. You should be competent with a rope grab. You should be competent if you're working a winch. You should be competent with that winch. And you should be well trained on whatever equipment you're using. If you're new, you should be willing to practice to understand that equipment inside and out because you probably had the training. You don't just train once and forget it. If you have a cable grab, you should know how that cable grab works and knows what its limitations are. When you hook your safety lanyard on, what's safe, what isn't? Is a climbing peg safe? No. Climbing peg is not recommended for safety lanyards because a safety lanyard should be connected to something that holds about 1,500 pounds of force. And why am I bringing all this up? Because whatever equipment you use, be it a bucket truck, a FISC, or a Petzl ID, or your harness, you would better know how it works. If you're using a rope grab, you'd better know what size rope that rope grab is made for. If you're using rope, you'd better inspect that rope and make sure it's safe. So you'd better be qualified and trained on the equipment you're using, and you should be qualified and trained on the equipment you might use. In other words, rescue equipment. All right? Just my making a point. I know I beat that dead horse, so let's move on. Did they do a hazard assessment? The guy in the article said he saw the power lines. I guess he didn't think he'd get that close, but he should have done a better hazard assessment, one. And he should have also, I don't know all the circumstances to what was going on, but if there was a site survey done, one thing that you can do on a site survey, like if the guy came out, he could call the electric company in advance and they could put the insulators over it. Now, I don't know. This might have been a service call. Service call, you don't have the luxury. You go out, you got to fix it. That's the way it is. But if you give the power company enough time, they'll come out and do that. We've had them do that when we've operated bucket trucks or cranes nearby. They come out, the ones I worked on, they put these insulators over all the power lines, and they're really good about doing it. They take it very seriously because obviously they don't want anyone to get shocked and burned like this guy did, especially anyone killed. So this is the value of 20/20 hindsight. We can say what these guys should have done. But if it was a service call, the guy, and he had another guy with him, they probably just went up and they weren't paying attention. It's probably just that simple. So, but they will do that, just so you guys know. If you're working around power lines, it's one of those things that you can actually have them, the power company come out and do. So with that said, I mean, I'm just going through different scenarios for you guys. But when you're out at the site, before you go up, whether you're alone or with somebody, you should plan out the way you think the bucket truck will go. You should identify all the hazards, in this case, power lines, and you should figure out how to maneuver around them. Now, I worked with one guy. We had a bucket truck where I used to work, and we took power lines very seriously. In fact, if we thought it was too close or too dangerous or too windy, we wouldn't go up because, obviously, we didn't want to die. So we would take it seriously, call the power company if we had to, and the power company, they usually don't come right out, but they're really good about it. I mean, a lot of you guys have done a lot of tower work. You probably had to deal with down lines in storms already or after storms. Power company's pretty quick to come out for a down line, really quick. To cover something like that, to be proactive, they would probably be very reasonable in coming out. But sorry, the onus is back on you as a bucket truck driver or the guy working in the bucket to understand what your risks are. If you have two guys and you have one guy on the ground, he can watch you as you go up. Make sure you have a means to communicate. A lot of time bucket trucks are by busy highways. When you're by a busy highway or it's windy, it is very hard to yell and understand what the guy's saying. If you have a radio on you, that's what you want to use. Maybe you want to communicate by cell phone, which traditionally at tower sites is very unreliable. You can do that too. But just make sure you have some way to communicate, okay? The key here is they should have paid attention to their surroundings. They were probably going up, a couple guys shooting the bull, and they were talking back and forth, and they probably just weren't paying attention. That's a guess. I say it over and over again because I want you to understand how important it is to pay attention. That's why I say be smart, be safe, and pay attention. Pay attention to what you're doing. It's easy not to. What's easy to do is easy not to do. I said that before. I'll say it again. So you guys have the great fortune to learn from this mistake. This is something where you guys can actually learn, develop, and grow by somebody else's near miss. This is why it's good to hear about near miss stories like this, because you can learn from them. You see power lines, you see a risk, you see a bee's nest, a hornet's nest. This is your opportunity to make a difference. All right? Thanks, everybody. I'll let you go. It's good talking to you guys again. Hey, like me on Facebook if you get a chance, my Facebook page. I'm available on iTunes and Stitcher, obviously, and Tower Safety is my sponsor, and I want you to support the Hubble Foundation. Very important to me. The Hubble Foundation does a lot for the fallen families. Also, I got all my products at the end of the blog. Scope of Work training. If you're going to work with Scope of Work or you haven't been paid in the past, you know what that's like. Tower Workers Logbook. I have on there a template for that. I also have a newsletter. So if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, you can leave comments back. You can just send a comment back. It's in the blog, wadeforwireless.com or wadesarver.com/podcast. And let me know what you think. You know what I mean? I have the Field Workers Tower Aid. I also have other stuff for you guys getting your CCNA, training guides, and project management professional guides. And also, if you're a project manager, I have a toolkit for you out there. I have affiliates with these guys. So, all right. I gave you a lot of crap. I'm trying to tell you what's going on out here. And if you want, give me your feedback. I'm open to anything. But I think with these two guys, I think they just got distracted. Plain and simple. It happens. Happens to all of us. And thank God these guys are alive. He really should have taken those lines a little more seriously. Be smart. Be safe. Pay attention to what you're doing.